Thank you for taking the time to piece together this message, friend. The time of our final conflict is drawing closer, and you and Anna have an important role to play in the events to come. So, watch over her, Guardian. I would have no life without Anna or the Exo program. I regret that we have become strangers, but we each have a path that we must walk, and ironically, there never seems to be enough time. Tell her, Rasputin's first attempt was in the right location, but the wrong moment. Look here, 43.549573 minus 73,544,868. Signed, E. Exited properly my left foot. Hey everybody, it's your buddy Beard Grizzly, and before we start up too much, I just want to make sure the crew over on Reddit, in particular the guys at the RaidSecrets subreddit, get credit for the amazing job they did as a whole for this community. Those that had a hand in solving this incredible cipher puzzle that was left around in the game were treated to even more puzzles found inside a tube that housed a full-sized Valkyrie javelin. This story and the puzzle itself doesn't seem over yet, so keep that in mind as we talk about everything again today. The blurb you heard at the start of the show followed a string of cipher coding. I can't stress enough how cool this was to see expand and develop. It's an important showcase for 3 reasons, however. First, it shows that the community is still coming together to solve puzzles. Raid Secrets woke up back when Chris Barrett was up to his shenanigans on Twitter, but it's good to see they still want to solve secrets around the game. Second, it shows that we have some mysteries to solve again, placed here by Vicarious Visions and Bungie. And finally, it shows they're listening to more stories we've wanted to hear about. Lastly, before we get going, if you guys hear any paper rustling at all, it's because I decided that I was going to handwrite this episode. I don't know what I was thinking. I'll just say it now. From the new data given to us in both Warmind and this little blurb, Elsie Bray seems to be the most likely candidate to be the Exo Stranger. I understand for some this outcome was not what you expected. All I can do is present the facts and go from there with speculation or otherwise. And for all we know, that's all this is for the time being. Speculation. Evidence just supports it a bit too much, at least for the time being. Obviously, I'm rambling a bit much considering the amount of information that we have to cover, so let's get to it. To start out this overlook, let's start out with Anna Bray. As some may have found out, Anna is an adopted member of the Bray family. We see this mentioned in the Polaris Lance lore tab, and its significance is to show the relationship between Anna and Elsie. They both seem to do a lot together, with Elsie giving support to Anna's endeavors. Thanks to the Braytech snow treads, we know that Elsie was viewed as an engineering legend around Clovis Bray. Her main focus was invested into weapons engineering, largely backed up by the lost memory fragments that we find around Braytech and its surroundings. Among other rewards, these 5 memory fragments open up another set of diary entries. I think it worth reading them all, but they're shorter anyway. 25 days until divergence. As an engineer, I wish I could bottle inspiration. You never know when it'll hit. For instance, this morning I was servicing some Hephaestus field units, test nodes that are meant to gauge weapon effectiveness in a variety of field conditions. And I had an idea. The nodes are mobile enough that they could be easily hidden and reconfigured to need specific weapon data to activate. If someone is smart enough, they could easily arrange the nodes to serve as a locking mechanism, one that's hidden right in plain view. At 25 days before leaving spacetime, or our current timeline within Destiny, Elsie is still working on the Hephaestus Index, or the project that actually creates all the weapons it seems that Rasputin uses for his Warmind. The sleeper nodes that we access are just a part that's left. We'll get to this eventually, but it's possible that node 005 in the World Line 0 that is recorded may be Sleeper Simulant itself, but that's purely speculation on my end. We'll get to that in just a moment, however, because that kind of ties into another one a little bit later on down the line here. 21 days until divergence. A brilliant classmate I met at the Physics Fellowship in Delhi took a job on Venus to continue her research. Twice a year, we exchange encrypted transmissions to share ideas, for it's a silly notion to lay claim to shared human knowledge. Ishtar Academy materials are forbidden on Mars, but I avail myself of opportunity to push myself to the next peak. If I can get my hands on a Vex core, there's no telling how far I can push Bray Engineering. 4 days after the first entry, she seems to at least get an encrypted message from Maya Sundaresh, or Chioma Essie, or really anybody else that might have been on the Ishtar Summit at that point. It is important to note that it sounds like these guys have transferred and talked back and forth with information previously throughout the years, so this isn't their meeting point, but it is to say that they've been talking back and forth with information for at least quite some time. Elsie's mind starts to wander to a core system that involves Vex tech. Could this be the first part of the device, the thing that FWC uses in order to actually look further into time and space? And I think we'll actually get our answer here in a little bit. This also shows rivalry between Clovis Bray and Ishtar Academy was in fact heavy, and that was something that's been speculated and thought of for a good while now, but this, I think, serves to kind of talk about it a little further. Elsie, on the other hand, seems like somebody that is all about academia and wants to make sure that everything is more revealed to everybody. Further, this kind of goes to show that most people, or at least those within Clovis Bray and Ishtar Academy, knew about the Vex at the very least. Maybe not so much about other elements, but I guess that's for another day. 12 days until divergence. Jumping into an Einstein-Rosen bridge to travel in time has long been regarded fantasy by serious physicists. But what if there existed a computer so powerful it could indistinguishably simulate an entire alternate timeline? Based on my early research, this is a possibility of Vex technology. The key question would be whether one could take knowledge from a simulated timeline and alter the original. One step at a time, though. 9 days after considering the Vex core system, she considers the device. This seems to be a much more accurate version of the device Maya may have used in Vex Grimoire 5. This leads to another series of events. It may also be the records that we see in Ghost Fragment Stranger 2, outlining points and possibility that she was looking up. Maybe not all of the entries, but at least most of them. The device logs themselves kind of outline these different means and different points in time, and it's always been thought that they've been more alternate realities as much as alternate timelines. This, I think, kind of falls back on that idea and confirms it at least a little bit more. Still, all the same, this falls back on some other pieces of entry that may kind of explain why we don't have the best of dealings, I guess you could say, with the device and why it makes people mad. But let's move on to the next entry. 3 days until divergence. If I'm gone, that means something terrible has happened to me. I've wiped all traces of my research, but Willa has security scouring the facility for me. She wants to take the weapon I've created, and at this point, it's impossible to take it off-world. It's way too dangerous to fall into wrong hands, so my only choice is to hide it. The old storage caches in Core Terminus and Olympus Descent are now linked to the Hephaestus network. 9 days after starting to look into the device and possibly peer into it, Elsie wipes out all of her files. This is seen in World Line Zero's entry, where Willa Bray, the one that also headed the SIVA project and shady lady extraordinaire of Clovis Bray, is curious about Elsie's work with the device. And of course, this could also lead back towards the Hephaestus Index if Elsie was successful in keeping the device more of a secret, especially considering, again, that Clovis Bray and Ishtar Academy were not on the best of terms for exchanging information. Meanwhile, it kinda brings up the possibility again that Sleeper Simulant could be the one index weapon that does stay in actual works, or the Ikelos logs, perhaps? That's at least what I'm thinking right now. But again, the weapon itself is not stated, so unless somebody has another tie-in that I may have missed since I haven't unfortunately had the chance to look up every single new lore card, let me know, because I know that there's a lot of information that I am missing so far. 2 days until divergence. I am out of time. All I've got to hold on to is the hope that I've moved enough of my tech into the vaults and that the visions of the future I've seen are accurate. That somehow, divorced from time and space, my words find you. Please tell Anna I'm sorry and that I never wanted her to be dragged into this. You were smart enough to break my code, so I'll put my trust in you to use what I've created to make things right. One day this will all make sense. I promise. The very next day, it looks like Elsie runs, leaving everything behind. She was able to see the future thanks to the device. Perhaps Maya picked up on it later and started to utilize it like we do see in Vex Grimoire 5. Again, this is how Elsie saw the future, and may have even been able to set up her messages to us before going to a divergent timeline. What is very off-putting about this idea is if FWC cannot utilize the ability to affect the other timelines they're looking into, could this suggest that a Warmind is needed to interface with the device? Was this what Rasputin meant about teaching him how to step through time in Rasputin Grimoire 4? The entry for Worldline 0 shows that Elsie deleted her records and even her access to Rasputin. If she had deleted these files and her records, did Rasputin then forget Elsie and the new guise of her exo frame? Did he ever live to see her to begin with, as the deciphered messages from earlier may suggest she was turned before these events? Without the exo program, I wouldn't have a life. To me, there seems like there's a small piece of missing information per right now on that angle on when Elsie may have actually turned to being into her exo frame. Something tells me because of this, there's something else that happened that forced many people's hands in order to actually turn into an exo. But again, I really feel like that's for another day, and it ties back to an even greater theory of mine. But okay, maybe that's a bit far off. But with this information out of the way and her messages set up for us before she leaves, Elsie steps into the Aeon Trespass, a vessel she designed 3 years prior and was never seen again. In terms of timeline, she would have left pre-collapse for reference. She's being hunted by Willa, not the Darkness, at the time. Perhaps the Dark is who she worries will gain access to her weapons, but this isn't fully talked about or at least understood for the time being. This is again why I think that this story is going to continue to unfold and we might hear more of it later. From here, we have the Chronicles of the Exo Stranger. From here, she hunts us down after seeing a dark future with the Vex, but she doesn't see the Hive in her visions of the future when she used the device previously in Clovis Bray. Remember, the device is not perfect, outlined in Ghost Fragment Future War Cults. This device actually causes hallucinations or makes people go insane, but there may have been a piece that was missing to allow for it to not have this kind of effect on either Anna or otherwise. And maybe, again, that could have been Rasputin, a Warmind, to end up making sure that things were actually put into place and kept together to make sure that the mind that was inside the machine or the device didn't go crazy. The idea of divergence would suggest she has split off from our current time. We have seen that she's able to appear within the same or similar spaces of multiple timelines. While this is scientifically impossible from our standpoints of space-time and time travel today, what we don't have is Vex tech. For these time-traveling robots, at least within the Vault of Glass and elsewhere, they can seemingly teleport and pull themselves through time. This is directly related to the new sword, Worldline 0, at least in the name this time, not the entry. I'll do my best to explain this. World lines deal with time travel theory and why it won't work in a traditional sense. Let's go back to the future and use Marty and Doc Brown as a more popular set of examples. The DeLorean time machine in 1985 is shown moving 1 minute into the future within the first 20 minutes of the film. Earth itself is constantly rotating while moving in an orbit around our sun. Within 1 minute, the Earth would have been about 1,100 miles away from the point the DeLorean leapt into time, let alone spinning the car into the Atlantic Ocean by all possibilities. Basically, due to the movements of Earth through spacetime, the DeLorean would also need to be able to teleport back to a location within space, a very specific one, understanding where Earth had moved within space. Doc Brown's flux capacitor might not be that good. World lines are also broken into 4 coordinates, with one showcasing for time and the other 3 for position. This allows for more accurate tracking of a planet, star, or otherwise. We also see this in Exodus Down, where they talk about a 4-vector system. 4-vector systems are basically what world lines would effectively be, or something similar too. But that's the best way to try to explain scientifically what they are. But anyway, enter the Vex and their ability to teleport. It also helps they appear to be mostly machines, so acting and moving, or at least surviving in space, shouldn't be a major deal for them. The question would be if Elsie would be able to, but as an Exo, they may be able to survive a vacuum. That, however, is talk for another day when we actually get a chance to look into the new info that we have on Exos, and it's good. Then again, it may be a moot point. Remember Elsie's DeLorean? The Eon Trespass. Recently, within Destiny's followed timeline, the Trespass resurfaces as Shadow Trespass. The Trespass is one major feature of note, being these black panels that seem to hide it from any kind of detection. The original would have been built before Elsie had started to mess with Vex tech, or at least the cores as mentioned in the second memory fragment. This also shows by there being 2 days before her divergent timeline appears. She would have had some time to modify Trespass to fit the Vex tech. Also pulling a Doc Brown. Was Trespass also made of stainless steel construction? Kidding aside, I think there's a few more points I need to bring up just to round out this discussion on the new information that we have, but relate it back to some older files that we need to look into. Thanks to the files recovered by our Guardian in the Vault of Glass during the No Time to Explain mission, Praetus Ghost discusses how he always sees a woman standing outside the cell they were in. This would have also been the Vault of Glass, and this confirms the possibility of how Elsie could have been traveling through timelines and, at best case, dimensions. Remember, if a Vex core can do it, I would hate to see what she could do when she actually gets into the Vault of Glass. We also know of an installation that the dead orbit craft, the Sophia, had discovered, codenamed A-113. This has never been fully explained, but does mention doorways that lead to other areas, other dimensions in some cases besides. This is another major mystery that may lead back towards how Elsie was able to traverse or travel through different places. There is also a possibility that Osiris knew of the sisters, Anna and Elsie, long before this. Garden Progeny 1 says, 2 siblings cleaved by time and space, reflections never found alone. The endings of the Eldritch race, a path long seen but never known. There's a lot of ways to interpret this, but it seems tough to dispute, at least by how I'm rereading it now. But of course, it still exists the idea and the dichotomy of light and darkness and how they're split in time, but I don't know, talking about time and space, and especially when we start dealing with the Exo Stranger, this one just looks like it's more on point to me. It would also be a very good beginning and end point, if you will, for a good majority of what the prophecies are of Osiris. Speaking of, we really still need to look into those, don't we? Talk about being 6 months behind. Otherwise, the remainder of the older Exo Stranger cards exist to peer through. Most of this is older info, and I know many have covered it in the past before. Perhaps I'll make that into a new Guardian School topic when I'm able to, just to kind of look over all of that older information and just to sum it up and make it a little easier to digest. Regardless, I know this is not how many expected to see the Exo Stranger revealed and talked about, but the evidence provided is there, and to me it doesn't close the book on the character. In fact, it only opens a new door, one where we simply know the name of a once mysterious character. But as always, now it's your turn. I'd love to know your thoughts, outrages, likes or dislikes with this story. Do you see any holes or issues with this theory? Something to add? I know this doesn't cover absolutely everything, but if I did, I'd be here for over an hour talking about this topic. Thanks for understanding. We'll still revisit parts, I'm sure, and again, I have a feeling that this story is still unraveling, and it's gonna be a good one. At least, I think so. If not, you at least know the buttons to press to let me know your feelings on this content, quickly or otherwise. If you do decide to subscribe, don't forget to press the bell for me and your other favorite creators. For now, however, I'll see you next Spacetime Guardians. Take care.